Hello, I'm just Johnny from Punk the Studios, and I'm very excited to bring you an update regarding all the massive improvements that have been done over the last year for WarBonds Battle for Vitoria. What you see in front of you here is the alpha components. These were the older components, the older version of the game from last year, and since then there has been a massive overhaul, not only in the components, the graphical assets, regarding just about every single piece. In addition to that, there has been massive improvements over refinements, balance changes, and simplification of the rules to make WarBonds an overall better experience. Now this here being presented is the master rules version. So all of these component changes you're going to see here are going to be relative to the master version, the big juggernaut version of WarBonds. Now what you see in front of you here is the initiative table and the dueling table for the alpha version of WarBonds, and let's take a look at what the updated beta components look like. And just a reminder, all these newer updated components that you're about to see are going to reflect what is going to be closer to the Kickstarter release of WarBonds. Okay, what you see here is the updated beta version initiative table, and as you can see, it has changed dramatically. Not only is it a visual improvement, there is massive refinement to how clear each individual space is. The overall size of the table, if I can kind of show you how it compares, is much larger, making the legibility of each of the individual spaces, the units that go on it, and all that information is just clearer and easier to decipher and parse through. In addition to that, we have here the dueling table has been significantly improved, and we can compare that to the older dueling table on the side. And as you can see, it's larger, there is a reduction in simplification, and there's overall a better clarity on the updated beta dueling table. Not only that, it is multi-purpose in that you can turn it to the other side, and in the master version rules there is nuanced terrain effects as well as terrain movement costs that players have to take into account, and all of this information is listed on the reverse side, so there's a much quicker way to reference all of these terrain details without players having to go to the player guide. Now it just rests on the reverse side of the dueling table. Okay, perhaps the biggest difference between the alpha and the beta components is going to be with regards to how the battle map and all the pieces that are placed on top of it are being presented. As you can see here, this is the alpha version of the components and of the battle map and the terrain tiles in and of itself, and this has been significantly overhauled in order to improve not only the clarity of the text, the legibility of where the player pieces are, the units themselves and their pieces. As you can see here, we have unit pieces right over here. It is really hard to determine which units are what, which army they belong to, and the detail, some of the additional details found within those pieces, as well as the war camp pieces and the settlement pieces. Overall, there's just a bit too much clutter, too much finickiness, and difficulty in parsing the necessary information. In addition to that, for setup, players had to place individual terrain tiles onto the battle map for the alpha version, and this introduced a large amount of overhead for setting up the game for the alpha version. And with regards to the beta version, you're going to see a massive change to how the terrain itself is being presented. It goes from being tile-based illustrations to being a full battle map illustration without sacrifice to the gameplay, an improvement to the legibility, and more importantly, an increase in the physical size of all components contained within it, which leads to better clarity and parsability of the critical information during gameplay. Now for the master version, the beta update for the battle map, as you can see, has been significantly overhauled. We have a fully illustrated battle map. You can see that these are clearly forest tiles. There are roads that are now actually part of the battle map illustration itself. We have river terrain and snowland and mountain terrain and deserts all the way in the corner. We even have some sea tiles, some bridges that we can distinguish between roads but offer the same type of gameplay capability, as well as an indicator of where the first settlement is going to be placed at the very start of the game. With this updated change to the battle map, there is no longer a need to pre-configure the battle map with terrain tiles being placed directly on top. That's no longer needed. You have an illustrated battle map that you can immediately, very simply set up by placing just the settlement tiles, and that's it. You could start playing that much quicker and jump into the Master WarBonds experience. Now, with regard to the size difference as well as the component difference, you can see here the differences between the terrain tiles. So we have Settlement 1 tiles over here, and this is the alpha version. Now this is the updated beta version, much larger, way easier to see, including further refinements to the visual artwork in and of itself. And just another example of a plains terrain for the alpha version and a plains terrain for the beta, this updated beta version. As you can see here, massive improvement, and keep in mind that these tiles aren't needed to set up the game with, only the settlement tiles. However, these tiles will get utilized as you play the game and the terrain itself starts to transform based on unit interactions and other gameplay effects. Now, one thing to know about this battle map is that there is no sacrifice to customizing it. So you can take these terrain tiles and override existing terrain. So this space is no longer a forest. All you have to do is just place a plains tile or a desert tile wherever you want on the battle map, and you could still customize this initial battle map illustration however you see fit. Now let's look at the updates to the pieces that get placed onto the battle map itself. Now, because the battle map itself is much larger on the beta version, the components that are going to be placed on top of it are also larger, and therefore making everything, all the information detailed within them to be easier to read and parse from a much further away distance. So you can see here, this is the alpha unit piece, the battle map piece for one of the warlords. And you can see here what the updated beta version is. We get the full-blown art for the character. It is significantly easier to parse information like how many movement spaces, what movement type they have, what type of unit it is, their alignment, and most importantly, their name, Vilna over here, which is rather difficult to parse where Vilna is listed right over here. So a massive improvement for the unit ID pieces, and this applies to every single unit ID piece for the game. In addition to that, you can see that the war camps themselves have gotten a massive improvement as well. So you have the alpha, the older alpha war camp, and we have the updated beta war camp. Much easier to see, easier to parse, as well as if there are additional pieces placed on top of it, you'll very easily be able to see what units belong to what and what is stacked on top of each other. All right, another exciting and excellent change between the alpha and the beta version of WarBonds is with regards to all the reference cards here. And we have the Warlord unit reference cards over here. This is the alpha version, as you can see, significantly smaller than the updated beta version. That makes parsing the information within it that much easier, better clarity, better refinement. In addition, there's some quality of life improvements to it as well. Some of these would include color coding, the alignment of the units themselves, and a whole slew of other improvements that have been done. Significantly easier to work with and to parse. And this applies to every single reference card in the game. Now, there's a slew of a bunch of other changes done to the game regarding all components, but there's also some additional components, as I've already demonstrated with the reverse side of the dueling table showing off the different terrain effects. Another addition to the game is this handling your turn card, and it clearly shows here in details what you can do when it's either your war camp or your unit taking their turn. It clearly indicates that you have a movement available, an action available. If you're doing a full turn ability, you can utilize both of those. And regarding during turn abilities, you can utilize up to 3 different during turn abilities. All of that information is listed in this nice little helper reference card for all the players. And this is just an idea of just some of the changes that have been applied, further refinements, further simplification, and getting that quintessential Master WarBonds experience to be as streamlined and as excellent as it can be. Be on the lookout for WarBonds launching on Kickstarter this fall 2023. If you could go to warbondsgame.com or battleforvitoria.com or punkthisstudios.com, any of those locations will take you over to the email list sign up. Please sign up if you want to follow more information relating to this truly spectacular, epic, grand strategy fantasy war game.